Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Source Material Live. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And this is Ed Brubaker Week. Yes. Occasionally on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, we focus on a comic book creator. We've done ones for like Alan Moore. We focused on individual creators here and there, and over the course of several podcasts, we'll look at various aspects of their work. And this particular week, there wasn't a whole lot else to talk about in movies and television. So I was like, you know what? Ed Brubaker is an award-winning comic writer. I really like his stuff. I was introduced to him through Gotham Central. A friend of the show, Andrew Graham, actually hit me to that vibe. And I fell in love with his stuff then, and I've been following him ever since. And as it turns out, he's written all kinds of great stuff. I especially like him because of his contributions to the noir, gritty crime drama. And one of the ones that I had actually Jesse got me for Christmas was The Fade Out, which I read, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I think it was actually the very first super book club team up that we did. So I was like, hey, all right, let's look at something else that he did that wasn't a Marvel or DC product, though he's done plenty of that. Let's look at some of his independent stuff. And then tomorrow night, we're going to look at a show that he co-wrote that's on Amazon Prime called Too Young to Die Old. And then because he didn't work in movies, though he does appear in The Winter Soldier, and The Winter Soldier was based off of what his run in Captain America. But he's never actually written a movie, and he's never had any, other than The Winter Soldier, he's never had anything like adapted to the screen. So the director, who also co-wrote Too Old to Die Young, well-known director in the more esoteric French New Wave-inspired cinema, Refn is his last name. We're looking at we're going to do an on-trial for one of his movies later on in the week, too. So kind of Ed Brubaker into Refn. That's what this week is. But we're starting with an independent comic that he did, one that he was nominated for an Eisner Award for in 2000 for, I believe it was, Best Limited Series. And it's called Scene of the Crime. And to help me do that is our good friend of the show, from the Cosmic Treadmill and X-Lapsed, and from Claremont to Claremont and whatever else he's got going on these days. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris Sheehan. How do you do, sir?
Hey, how are you? Hey, that's quite an extended introduction to our Ed Brubaker week. I, too, am a big fan of his work here. I believe I discovered it with, he had a brief run on Batman before Gotham Central. It was right after the No Man's Land. Did you ever read No Man's Land?
It's on the list, but I have not read it.
Okay, No Man's Land was like a year-long storyline where Gotham City was destroyed and with an earthquake. And
yeah, they used part of that to inspire, I think, the last season or so of Gotham.
But I didn't watch it. I shouldn't blow raspberries at that.
No. That your answer was correct.
Hey, like a broken clock, it happens. But after Gotham was rebuilt, Ed Brubaker came in, and I want to say he was writing. I guess he was writing Batman or Detective. I don't remember which one, but it was good stuff, and I liked it a lot. He is responsible for the only X-Men space story that I didn't fall asleep during, so that's good. He did some good Daredevil. One thing he did a Catwoman series, which was a lot of fun as well as Gotham Central, which was great. Captain America, though, I never agreed with bringing Bucky back, so I could never get on board with it. I know really? I'm probably missing out on something spectacular, but I've tried reading the Winter Soldier storyline like 2 or 3 times, and I just can't do it because growing up, it was like you have Gwen Stacy, Bucky, and Uncle Ben. They need to stay dead, right?
Right.
And I believe 2.5 of them have been brought back, so nothing's sacred anymore, unfortunately. And I no matter how well the story was written, I feel like Bucky's one of those characters that should have should have always stayed in the ground. So I didn't get onto that one, but that's, no fault of Mr. Brubaker. I'm sure it's a wonderful story. Enough people like it, and it's inspired movies and all that stuff. So what are you going to do? It's just not my idea of a good time. But for Scene of the Crime here, upon reading it, I was shocked to realize that it was very, very familiar, because I did, in fact, read this back when it came out. This is straight out of DC's Vertigo line, and I was really, really into Vertigo back in 1999, 2000, 2001, because I was 19, 20, and 21 years old. So I think I was supposed to be. If you do comics and you're a late teen, early 20, you need to be reading Vertigo back in the day. And I gobbled it all up here. I probably haven't read it since then, but it didn't take long for me to figure out. I was like, oh, wait, I did read this, and I did enjoy this the first time as well. So it was a neat little trip back to the past for me today.
Well, good. I'm excited to hear you talk about it again, especially since you have that kind of familiarity with it. Just a little more about Mr. Brubaker here. He won a 2003 Prism Award for Disguises, which took place in Catwoman, issue 17 through 19. He won a 2004 GLAAD Media Award for Catwoman, for Outstanding Comic Book. In 2006, he won the Harvey Award for Best Writer for Captain America. 2007, he won an Eisner for Daredevil, Captain America, and Criminal. Best New Series for Criminal. 2007, another Harvey Award for Daredevil. And then in 2010, 12, 15, 16, and 19, he won Eisner Awards for Captain America, Criminal, Daredevil, Iron Fist. A lot of stuff with Criminal here. The Fade Out for Best New Series and Best Limited Series. And My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, which sounds amazing.
And I love that the Eisners have still not changed their the names of their awards from graphic album to graphic novel. They've always been graphic album, and every time I see that, I can't help but chuckle a little bit.
It's funny. So he was nominated for a bunch more, including what we're going to talk about tonight. But he actually he started off in the crime fiction genre with works like Low Life, The Fall, and Sandman Presents Dead Boy Detectives, and then finally Scene of the Crime. It was later that he became known for the Marvel and DC stuff that we've been talking about. But I really wanted to talk about Scene of the Crime, which, as you said, came out May through August of 1999. It was a 4-issue limited series, and it's been since collected into one graphic novel. And it follows private detective Jack Harriman as he is hired to track down a missing person in and around San Francisco. Harriman is in his mid to late 20s and runs his office from the first floor of an art gallery called Scene of the Crime, which is owned and run by his uncle, Nut Harriman. In the story, Nut is a famous crime scene photographer, and he uses his reputation to aid Jack at several points throughout the story. So we're going to go through the plot here, and Chris and I were talking before the show started. Instead of sort of breaking it down issue by issue, I'm just going to read through a just straight plot summary, and then we're going to kick the book around because there's a lot to talk about, I think. And I have a lot to say about this book, but I don't want to... This isn't like... All right, mark this spot on your bingo card, everybody. This isn't like Death of Hawkman, where I feel the need to go, or the other one that everyone hated, Bounty Hunters, where I feel I need to like break it up issue by issue. I want to talk about this as a whole story, like if it were a movie, because that's how it reads.
Yeah.
All right. So Jack Harriman is hired by Alex Jordan on the recommendation of Jack's father's friend, Detective Sergeant Paul Reynolds of the San Francisco Police Department. Jordan is trying to find her younger sister Maggie, who has been missing for nearly a month. Harriman follows Maggie's trail to an open house for a commune called Lunar House. Lunar House is continuing the ideals of the Summer of Love in modern-day San Francisco. Jack confronts the charismatic leader, Joseph Lunar, about Maggie. Lunar feigns ignorance but directs Jack to the commune secretary. The secretary informs Jack that Maggie was indeed at the commune for a few weeks, but left suddenly with no explanation. She also informs Jack that Maggie had slept with Lunar, but brushed off the detail, saying that Lunar slept with everybody. Later, Jack sneaks outside and rifles through the house recycling bin, finding a phone message from Maggie and a contact number that leads to a motel upstate. And this is where the plot thickens.
Mm-hmm.
Reluctant to stake out the motel himself, Jack takes along his Uncle Nut. When Maggie finally turns up at her motel, she is drunk and being robbed by the guy she came home with, like you do.
Mm-hmm.
Harriman tries to fight the man, but he's taken by surprise and winded. Nut then manages to scare the guy off with his camera flash. They take Maggie inside and dump her in the bathtub. When Maggie awakens, Jack interrogates her about her disappearance and learns that Maggie has lived a wild life due to feeling lost. After talking for a while, Jack drops Maggie back at her motel and leaves, with the idea of perhaps talking to her again later. It is also hinted that he is attracted to her. However, this all comes to an end the next morning when Jack receives a phone call that Maggie's body was found shot to death in her motel. Mm-hmm. Probably soon after Jack had dropped her off. Initially believing that Maggie was involved in some sort of blackmail scheme, police later discovered that a suitcase filled with $10,000 was left untouched in Maggie's closet, meaning Maggie's death was not money-related and that something bigger than blackmail was going on. Heartbroken and frustrated, Jack begins yet another round of investigations. He's not letting this go, man.
Nope.
In his investigations, Jack learns that Joseph Luner's name is actually Virgil. From pictures his Uncle Nut took several years before, Jack discovers that Virgil was the leader of yet another compound similar to Lunar House, and that it too burned down. Nut further finds a photograph featuring a young Maggie, her sister Jordan, and their mother standing before a dead body. The body was that of their father, Jeff, who died in the fire along with 12 other people. Virgil was also reported to have died in the fire, but Jack does not believe this. Jack decides to interrogate survivors of the fire for information. When asking one of the survivors about the fire, the girl revealed that the fire started in the children's dorm and no one knows who started it. Someone knows.
Mm-hmm.
Someone definitely knows.
I'm sure of it.
She also seems to harbor hatred towards Virgil, claiming that he ruined her life, and reveals to Jack's horror that half her face is scarred from the burns. As the investigation continues, another twist in the case comes up when Maggie's mother visits Jack at Nut's house, where Jack has been living to try and clean up from his previous drug and alcohol addictions. Maggie's room sees the photograph of herself standing with her daughters before her dead husband, which have been put on display in Nut's public gallery. The mother reveals that Maggie started the fire and alludes that she was a pyromaniac. She further explains to Jack how free love at the communal, such as Lunar House, worked. The parents at the communal lived separate from their children. The children were all put together and placed in their own dormitory where all adults returned taking shifts watching the kids. But that's not all. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, the parents would indulge in free love. However, Virgil began encouraging the children to participate in sexual activities too. He wanted the children to have experience and to find themselves. This escalated to men of the compound taking sexual advantage of the children. In proof of this, Jack finds a picture of Virgil raping one of his then young Jordan sisters. Jack investigations continues, and he finds further secrets and discovers that Jordans did not reveal all the details of their family problems to him. Yeah, that's where that particular summary ends. This ends with him storming into the hospital where the sister who hired him had attempted suicide, and that basically what is revealed, and help me out with this if I don't quite have all the details here, but
something important about the point here with Jack as a private investigator here. He's being sent to look for this sister who's been missing, and they make it very clear that they do not want the police to be involved.
Right.
And that's going to be very important at the end here. We mentioned here that Jack is recommended by, what is it, Reynolds, right?
Yep.
Yeah, or Raymond's, is it? I think it's Raymond's.
No, it's Reynolds.
Oh, it is Reynolds. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So he's told to he's given the tip by this Reynolds guy, and Reynolds is actually cheating on his wife with Alex Jordan. So it's kind of wibbly here because they frame it as though they don't want the police to get involved because they don't want the affair to come out, when in reality they don't want to deal with the police because of everything we're about to talk about in a few moments. The sister, this was Maggie, was the younger sister. I I tell you, it's a weird story because it's 4 issues long, but the first issue feels like it is like 4 issues long in and of itself. We get so much information in that first issue. You really like live this story. Just all the PI stuff, the tracking her down to the hotel. Uncle, I think it's Newt, but I think it's funny that you called him Nut, and I wasn't going to correct you because I think calling him Nut is better. But Uncle Nut down there,
old Nutty,
old Nut. I liked calling in the favor here. I liked having him with his camera since he is a crime scene photographer, and I like how that all plays into the story here. One thing about Jack here that I didn't realize the first time through, 20 odd years ago when I read this, is that he's not a good fighter. And I was like, wow, this guy kind of sucks at fighting.
Yeah.
But we find out that he only has one eye. And I totally forgotten that he has one eye. So it stands to reason that he probably wouldn't be the best fighter because he has a sizable blind spot. So when he gets taken out by like the heavy metal guy who is trying to rob Maggie's purse, at first I'm like, wow, this guy kind of sucks. But then I realized that, hey, there's a reason for that. A lot of little details like that are in here. As with a lot of mystery stories in comics, television, everywhere, there are a lot of convenient things here. A lot of things falling into place, but it's done so well that you don't really see the seams so much here. I'll let you get into the reveal here, and we can talk about that.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, and this is, I just read this earlier today. I know that their father,
Jeff,
didn't actually die in the fire. They said he did.
Yeah.
Because they were... So he was...
Jeff was really buying into the free love concept
here. He was having sex with his daughters, is what was
He
going
was banging
on.
his daughters, yes.
Right. So he's a
doing
scumbag.
his daughters.
And the wife did not want him to go to prison, so
she let everyone think he was dead.
Right. And then he changed his name to the character at the beginning to Lunar. Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. And I think
the Virgil guy actually bears a fairly striking resemblance to this Luna guy.
Right.
Because we have Jack goes to the commune early on here to try that because that's his only lead. His only lead is like a brochure for this for Lunar House. So he goes there and it's a shithole. It's like a tenement building full of hippies growing pot. It's probably not a place you'd want to hang out too long because they're very angry hippies, oddly enough. But he runs into this Luna guy. He is evasive. He's not answering any questions. But then we see a picture of this this purple Virgil from the original commune that Maggie and Alex grew up on. And they do bear a similar look. One has longer hair than the other, and of course they've aged 20-odd years, 20, 30 years. But that's why we're led to believe that this Purple Virgil guy changed his name to Luna and then redid the whole thing all over again, doing a new take on his original commune. But it's actually not him. Luna is revealed as being Jeff, Maggie and Alex's sexually abusive father.
So the plan, from what I remember, was that Maggie was gonna shoot him. Like he had the $10,000 was money he gave her, and it was quote unquote, he called it child support.
Yeah,
and she didn't want it, and she was going to give it back to him. And I think they had come up with this idea of when they found out that he was there, that he was going to kill him. She was going to kill him, and then I think she finally just kind of got over it and was like, you know what? She ended up sleeping with him while he was there. She banged him.
Yeah.
This adult woman who was molested by him as a child, by the way, once again, his daughter, also chose to sleep with him under his new guise while she was there, and then she split rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did he know that was his daughter all grown up?
I think so. Yeah, because he gave her the child support.
That's right. He gave her the child support. Good point.
Yeah.
So
they knew, and this was seen as a betrayal from Maggie to Alex here. Their whole plan. I don't know exactly what their end game was. Maggie was carrying a gun, so we can assume that she did have murderous intent.
Right.
But they were also unclear as to whether or not Luna actually was their father. They had a sneaking suspicion. They were like 90% sure.
Right.
But they needed to clarify it before they did something that they couldn't take back.
Right, which is why she went there. So she went there to make sure that was really her dad. They ended up sleeping together a few times, and then he tried to give her the money, and she was like, no thanks. And then she was going to go back and kill him, and then she was like, you know what? Let sleeping dogs lie. I'm just going to move on with I'm done with my life. At which point the sister went to the hotel, confronted her, and was like, nope, he's got to go, and if you won't do it, then I will, and shot her sister.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, promptly attempts suicide. Doesn't accomplish it. But this is all revealed in a suicide note to their mother, who
was a bitch,
who knew this was all going on back in the day and did nothing about it, and because
covered for their husband. Yep.
Right. And so, just to kind of finish off these plot details, and then we can really kick this around. At that point, now she's dating Reynolds, the other sister,
the cop. Yeah,
and this all gets revealed in front of the cop, who didn't know what was happening but knew something had happened and was like, I'm better off not knowing. Now he knows, and the expectation from our hero here is that he's gonna bring him in. Jack thinks Reynolds is going to run them in because the mom is the one that actually killed Luna.
Yeah.
But Reynolds is like, nope, I'm covering this up. We have enough patsies and enough dead suspects that I can get away with with forging some things, and they're gonna get away scot-free, and you're going to let him, and here's why. And then we get this final scene at the end where he's talking to the ex-girlfriend, and it turns out Jack's father blew up in a car. His car was bombed, and that's how he lost an eye. He was standing close to the blast zone. And as it turns out, years later, when he was waiting to buy some drugs, he was waiting to score some heroin, he hears some guys talking about a bombing job that they had actually screwed up, and it turns out they weren't supposed to bomb his father's car, but that's what happened, and so he died unnecessarily and accidentally. So Jack corners the guy later on and shoots him dead, and then calls Reynolds, and Reynolds covers it up for him. So now he kind of owes Reynolds one. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so there's this long kind of elongated conversation once all of this is revealed and everything else that he has with the girlfriend about how I broke up with you because I couldn't share that part of my life with you, and because it hurt so bad. But now, after everything that's happened, and I'm telling you, I feel like I can move on with my life. And she tells him, you could have told me at the time and spared me the breakup, because I still love you and I still care about you. And then that's kind of it. The story ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me first say that one of the kind of catchphrases on this show is, and I said this out of my frustration with Darkside War, so people who long-time listeners to the show know where I'm going with this. I have often said, doesn't anyone rob a bank anymore? And I'm realizing about my tendencies in comic books is I really don't like the cosmic, spacey, esoteric, pseudo-philosophical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like gritty crime noir. We did a book on the Super Book Club team up a month or so ago called Dracula Motherfucker. And I was attracted to the book. I don't know if you've read it.
No.
I was attracted to the book because it's like Dracula shows up in like seedy Los Angeles of the 70s. And so other than the Dracula part, it's got that crime noir sort of feel to it.
Okay.
Another one that I read. I've never talked about it really. I've never done a show on it. It's not been a thing we blogged about or whatever. I just read it because I love the name of it. Killer Groove. And it's a similar thing. We've got detectives and investigators and a crime, and and it's all about like the setting and the feel and the themes. And I just like that stuff and different takes on it. I read a review of this one where it was like, if you like, just your average, basic, gritty crime story, this is an episode of that show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, you either like this sort of thing, you'll like this, or you don't, and you'll skip it. It's nothing particularly special, was this person's thought, but it's a great example of that genre. And for me, I loved it. This is exactly the kind of stuff I want to read, and we'll continue to read more of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, this was very, very good. I feel like a lot of the industry around the turn of the century was sort of using this formula to the point where I think I kind of got burnt out on it, because I was a one of everything at the store guy. I walked in on a Wednesday and it was give me one of everything, and you got a lot of derivative stuff, a lot of genre stuff. And when you have writers like Brubaker and Greg Rucka, who are really good at this sort of story, doing this sort of story as prolifically as they were, you start to see a lot of the trends, and you might get a little bit tired of them. This is also when like Oni Press was starting to fire up. Image was undergoing like its change from the 90s to the more serious and artsy 2000s stuff. So we got a lot of stuff that was kind of in this wheelhouse, and I loved it. I loved it. I did get tired of it, but I mean, that's just something that's going to happen. That's not an indictment on the genre. But I had a really good time with this. It's been a long time since I've read something. Well, it's been a long time since I've read something without an X in it, so that was that was something, I guess. But this was really good here. We haven't mentioned the artist, Michael Locke, who really does. I mean, you've probably seen Michael Locke's work. He actually did a run with Brubaker on Daredevil, probably like a decade after this. And I think he also did some stuff with he might have done some stuff with Bendis as well. But it's basically the house style for turn of the century Vertigo. It's, what was that book that we read, Lucifer, not too long ago, right? Similar in tone to that, I feel. The more muted and flat colors, and like the heavier lines. Very much of its time, but at the same time also timeless, because it's just very clean comics work that really, really suits this genre and the noir and detective sort of a feel. Really good stuff. Really good stuff here. And like you said, I don't know that this is something that'll like rock your socks, but it's not something that'll make you mad either. It's, like you said, it's an episode of that show that you enjoy, and it makes a difficult story to talk about at length, because there's really nothing to rail about. It's just something that was like, hey, I read that and it was really good and I enjoyed it, and that's kind of it.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the points about the book I wanted to mention was, I don't know how many books are out there that openly deal with rape and incest. Like, even the crime books, like
read some Vertigo.
Okay, see, that's why I'm glad I'm talking to you about this, because like I have not come across it a lot, and I was gonna say I almost feel like it's taboo, like oh, there's writers not really touching this stuff, but apparently that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, you can find anything, and as soon as I knew where we were headed with this, even though it's been forever since I've read this, it's like, okay, there's gonna be some sort of sexual misconduct involved in this. I mean, we're dealing with a free love commune and little girls who are grown women now who are very angry and troubled. It's like, well, they kind of telegraph that, and it's something that I couldn't point you to any specific examples, but I know it's not something that's shied away from perhaps as much as people might think.
One of the things the driving force of this book is the central character, Jack Harriman. And the thing I like about him, and last week, Ronnie and I talked about Greg Rucka's Stumptown, and, the lead in that is a woman, and they give her at least...
Because it's Greg Rucka, yeah.
They gave
Is she really
her...
strong? Is she really tough?
You wouldn't believe it, but she was from the military, and then she became a PI.
Mm-hmm. Was she a white woman?
She sure is.
Oh, okay. That actually kind of surprises me.
But I wanted to contrast the two. So Dex Perios is a former Marine who becomes a PI once she leaves the military. And if you kind of combine the book with the show, and this is one of the things that Ronnie and I talked about, was how we have only read the first volume, and the first volume didn't dig too deep into her. She's already a fully formed character. She's already a PI. In the show, there's a bit of a transition. The point that I'm getting to here is that Greg Rucka gave her some tools in her tool belt so that she can be competitive in a man's world of grit and crime and strength and violence. And with Jack, who is a man, but he's not any kind of veteran. He's not a former cop.
He's a fuck up.
Yeah, I was like, he's a guy who was a dysfunctional drug addict.
Yep.
And someone who lost his father in a traumatic fashion, and he became a PI, sort of pulling himself out of his depressing situation. Mm-hmm. And he's got the one eye, and he's not an especially good fighter or strong or whatever. And while he's decent at his job, he comes across as, like, the term everyman was used, but, like, he just comes across as, like, any old PI that you could just find in a phone book. Like, there's nothing especially special about him at all, which I liked.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, he's not treated as the smartest man in the room. He's not the toughest guy. The middle part of the story, the middle two chapters, or two issues, because there were several chapters per issue, but the middle two issues of this story, he's following the wrong trail.
Right.
It's like it facilitates the story, but it doesn't make him look like a spectacularly great private investigator. He's being used, he's being manipulated because he owes a guy a favor. The guy who is pulling him into this knows that Jack knows that he owes him a favor, and he's not going to make too many waves if things get kind of sticky. He's a patsy, and he's being used. So that's his value in this.
It had a very Chinatown feel to it at the end. Just at the end. You've never seen Chinatown? Very famously, there's a bit in Chinatown where I can't remember that it might have been Faye Dunaway. I'd have to go back and rewatch it. I watched it in college. That's how long ago this was. There's this famous actress.
Oh. When was her first appearance?
And she's being smacked around, and he's like, "She's your sister. She's your daughter. She's your sister." No, something. Let's go with it. Your sister. She's your daughter. She's your sister. She's your daughter. She's your sister and your daughter. Because there was incest involved, and and it has a very tragic, bleak ending. Chinatown. It's a very famous noir movie. It's actually it was so like I said, I watched it I wasn't a film student in college, but I took film classes and I took some directing and stage production classes. I actually have my degree was my original bachelor's degree was in language and literature, but but you know how college works, right? So
Certainly.
there's you can take fucking Klingon and you could be a math major.
Yeah.
So in the language and literature department, there was a lot of art creation in terms of stage and screen. So I took a lot of those classes. In any case,
sure.
So the film class that I took that I watched that I watched Chinatown in, we were talking about how, the structure of the film and everything, and where I was getting to was the very last line of the film is, it's Chinatown. Meant to say, like, that's just the way things go around here. They never work out for the good. That's Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the kind of feel I got with this book was he wants to avenge her death, by bringing whoever did it to justice.
Sure.
He finds this girl who just, was in a shit situation and doesn't seem like a bad person, and they connect because they're both, traumatized, broken individuals, and he just wants to see her do okay and get back to her life, and then within less than 24 hours, she's dead, and he's like,
yeah.
This will not stand. I have to figure out who did it, even though that's not his job. That's not how this works. He is not responsible to solve homicides.
Yep. And nobody wants him to dig into it.
Right. The mom wants him to leave it alone for obvious reasons, because she doesn't want to be found out as this shit-ass parent who, sold her daughters into sex slavery, incestuous sex slavery nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
The sister doesn't want to get involved because she was planning
she's
a
the
murder. Right. She's the murderer, and they were gonna murder Luna. Reynolds doesn't want to get involved because he's banging her.
Yep.
So, it was like I know you're not the big movie guy, but I mean, like, there's a cinematic quality to this.
Certainly.
When everybody wants you to stop, he kept going.
Yep.
And I think,
for sure.
And I think that's what I loved about it was like this everyday schlub who's already like, who's just trying to get his shit together, finds himself mired in an uphill investigation where nobody wants him to succeed for no other reason than because, damn it, there just has to be justice for once. And it doesn't work out at all because that's Chinatown.
There you go. Very well put. No, this was really good. This was really, really good. I like how Jack he's got like all these contacts, just like these dregs, but like dregs with high positions. Everything that he has is predicated on someone else's reputation. Like, he should have been arrested 2 or 3 times during this series, but he wasn't because of Newt.
Right.
Because people cared about Newt and respected Newt so much that we're going to let Jack we're not going to ruffle, his feathers, so just be good. Don't mess around. There was that one guy that they went to the pot fields with. I don't remember his name, but it was just like some sort of like sleazy detective who causes a distraction and then lights the hippies' weed on fire. Like the whole plot of it. Just really, really fun. It's such an interesting thing that they built this this cast for a 4-issue story. Like, when it ended, it felt like, okay, well, what's the next trade? And there isn't one, as far as I know. I mean, this was a 4-and-done story where it feels like this is a pilot pitch for an ongoing sort of following Jack around and having him solve crimes and dealing with his cast and his running buddies, and it's not that at all, which is both refreshing and disappointing.
So 2 things, just because this would have bothered me. The line is actually, forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
There you go. I've heard that line. I just don't know what it meant.
Okay, well, someday me and you should watch Chinatown.
Okay.
And then you can also hear this riveting dialogue right here. Oh. She's my daughter. I said I want the truth. She's my sister. She's my daughter. She's my sister. My sister, my daughter. I said I want the truth. She's my sister and my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Delightful.
Yeah. Forget it, Chris. It's Chinatown.
It is. It is.
I have to put up hashtags for when I post this on Twitter. I might have to just hashtag Chinatown.
There you go.
I thought, in terms of linear story structure, this just, it goes from one thing to the next. He gets a lead, he follows it. He gets a lead, he follows it. He questions this person, he questions that person. They don't mess with time in any kind of way. They don't mess with, this isn't Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction was a movie by Quentin Tarantino where it's
Vinnie Barbarino was in that, right?
Yes, that would be
Danny
John
Zuko.
Travolta. Yep, yeah. It was a teenage wedding, and they all wished him well. Girl, you'll be a woman soon.
Beauty school dropout.
That's Grease.
I was actually in a production of Grease.
Were
I
you
was
really?
in 3rd grade. Yes, I played Putsy. Yeah, I was one of the T-Birds.
I might gift you a subscription to Paramount Plus just so when the Grease shows up on that, I can make you review it with me then.
With Alexa Bliss and the Fiend.
Yes. And Roman Reigns as the guy with the flame car.
There he is.
Anyway, I lost my train of thought there. So anyway,
this isn't Pulp Fiction, linear.
Thank you. This isn't Pulp Fiction. The story just follows from A to Z, which I really liked because that's another thing that happens a lot in comics where it's just like the writer thinks he's smarter than he really is in a lot of the books that we've read over the past couple of years, either together or individually. I don't know if you find this a lot in comics where you just have these writers who they're so into what they're doing that they don't keep the reader following along. And you read a book and you're like, I have no idea what happened in this thing. It's all over the place.
Oh, I'm in the middle of a 22-part crossover written mostly by Jonathan Hickman. So yes, I understand what you're talking about.
And that's not what this is. This is pretty much like he gets up in the morning and at the end he has the conversation with the girlfriend and everything in between, and it all flows perfectly.
It does.
Which I really liked.
Absolutely. I like how we're seated with the girlfriend here because, I mean, we come into this cold. We don't know who this guy is. We don't know who Jack is. We just know he is the guy we're going to be following. And we don't know. They do this very subtly here. They have him go to a bar and get a drink, and he gets plastered, and people are like, oh, you're back on that? So, like, we automatically know, okay, he had substance abuse problems, It wasn't like we needed to get a 6-issue miniseries on, okay, this is what happened when he was 19 and he was drunk and he ran a busload of nuns off the road. We didn't have to get any of that.
Right.
We just got subtle mentions like, oh, I thought you were over that. And then he runs into his ex-girlfriend and she's like, oh, God, you're drunk. I thought you were over that. and then she throws him into a cab and sends him away. And then she pops up like 2 or 3 more times, and it's a little less awkward and a little more cordial each time. And then at the end we have the big reveal that the rationale for why he so abruptly walked out on their relationship. And it comes together really, really well because it didn't feel like – sometimes, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, sometimes when we're reading comics, pacing is a struggle. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for people who can do any sort of serialized storytelling because it might not be completely obvious here, but I don't know how to do that kind of thing. I don't know how to – I can't make every episode be 30 minutes when I do a show. I would love to make it so, okay, every episode's going to be 30 minutes. I can't do it. It's just not something I can do. Comic book creators need to make 20 pages, and every time out, 20 pages. Your 20th page needs to be the cliffhanger. You need to get from point A to point B in this amount of pages. And in a lot of books, it either feels like they ran out of pages or they ran out of story and then filled their remaining 3 or 4 pages with crap. And we don't get that here. Everything feels like it was just very strategically laid out. The bits and pieces with the girlfriend, and then that epilogue. And the epilogue ran just as long as it needed to, and it filled us in on this guy's story, and also informed us as to why he wasn't able to succeed in his mission for the miniseries, and why he left his girlfriend, and it allows him to not so much get a happy ending, but maybe a weight off his shoulders sort of an ending, which in and of itself could be considered a happy ending if we think about it that way.
My last point and my last comparison to Greg Rucka's Stumptown, one of the comments that Ronnie and I made about that, just because they're so similar in tone, we didn't feel like we got enough of Dex. Like, for a 4-issue limited series, they tell the tale, they solve the crime, she finds the girl, but you don't get a lot of Dex. And you're kind of left wanting, and you wonder how just from those 4 issues they ever got a show out of this. And, you realize that, later on, he wrote more Stumptown, but if you were just going off those 4 issues, you're like, it's a fine enough story, but it's kind of shallow. And because
sounds like Greg Rucka.
All right, let's stop for a second. What is your? I need 50 words here. What is your issue with Greg Rucka? What's your problem, man?
I think he's a little bit of a virtue signaler.
Okay.
But and a lot of what he writes is very, very samey.
Okay.
A lot of what he writes is very, very good, but a lot of what he writes is very, very samey. And
what's the word on his Wonder Woman run? Because I've heard like that's his most famous thing. I've actually read part of it, but
I didn't care for it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was at a time where DC was getting back to basics. He was trying to reinvent the wheel, and I feel and Wonder Woman to me is a boring character, very, very boring. I don't think I've read more than 2 or 3 issues of Wonder Woman that I could be like, wow, that wasn't bad, because Wonder Woman's boring. And I found Rucka's to be equally boring and overly complicated, especially for a time where DC wasn't dumbing things down, but they were making it. Everything was more linear. Everything felt like they were trying to eschew a lot of the. It's weird. They were eschewing baggage by implementing continuity, which sounds like a total, what is that word I'm thinking of here? Oxymoron. But it actually felt that way. Everything was a lot more comfortable, and everything kind of made sense, and everything kind of mattered. But then, this is the second Wonder Woman run. I never read the first one, so I guess I should qualify that. This is the run around the time of Rebirth. I know he did do a run which was pretty acclaimed.
That's what I was talking about. The original one where at the end of it she kills Max Lord.
Before Infinite Crisis.
Yeah.
I've never read it. I have it, but I never read it because Wonder Woman's boring.
Yeah, I read the first volume of the Rucka run around the time that the first movie came out. Now we only ended up doing the Hikatea around that time, but when we were done with that, I finished because I bought the entire volume and it includes the Hikatea. So I had read it at the time, and I remember going like, nothing is happening in this book. Like this is a lot of she's a politician, that's or a diplomat or whatever. That's kind of it. I'm like this is a weird comic. Now that might have also been the chemo talking at the time, but still.
No, it's hard to find a Wonder Woman that is not completely dull to me, and that sounds like it would be mighty dull as well.
To the point that I was getting to was, as you're criticizing Rucka for writing kind of shallow books. That was our take on Stumptown as well. Whereas this, by comparison, even in 4 issues, I felt like we got a rich, fully formed, fully developed character in Jack Harriman.
Almost too much, where there should be more of it.
Yeah, I want to see what else he does.
Yeah, we need a second arc.
Yeah, I would be interested in him going back to this, and I don't know if he ever will, or what he's doing these days. If he's apparently he's writing a lot of television.
I was going to say he's probably pitching Netflix a lot of stuff.
What do you call it? He in 2016, Brubaker joined the writing staff of HBO's Westworld, and he co-wrote an episode of that. And then 2019, he developed and co-wrote Too Old to Die Young. I have no idea what he's working on now. But I would imagine he's working on more television, or maybe he'll come up with a movie or something.
Probably, and if not, he'll put out a 4-issue series that he will hope will get a television adaptation.
Well, Ed Brubaker, if you're listening, I hope you bring this. I hope you bring Scene of the Crime to somebody. I hope it gets developed into a movie or television show, and I hope you continue to add to it because it was a really great series. I'll let you have I'll let you have the last word here, Chris. Anything else you want to talk about?
Maybe skip pitching it to a network and just do another arc. Because that's all I care about.
There you go. All right. With that, as I mentioned, tomorrow we're going to do Too Old to Die Young. It'll be myself. It was really just supposed to be myself and Jesse Starcher, but I made Robert Winfrey watch it as well, and because he likes to watch stuff that makes you think and rewards you for paying attention. And I'm like, oh boy, you're going to love this then. And he loved about half of it. And the other half, he said, curse you, Radulich, curse you 1,000 times. So he's going to come on the show just so he could do that. And that'll be fun. And then the Podsmen are getting together. We're going to try to squeeze a podcast during Bailey's lunch hour. We're going to talk about the Elimination Chamber, which was a show until Miz cashed in the Money in the Bank. And then it was amazing. It was awesome.
Hey, I see what you did there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, aren't I clever? And then myself and Sean Comer will do an on-trial for Only God Forgives, which is a movie that Nicholas Winding Refn directed after Drive. That doesn't get nearly as much acclaim as Drive. It's got a pretty split audience, so I think that'll be a fun one to dissect. Looking forward to that. And then on Thursday, myself and Robert Winfrey will review I Care a Lot from Netflix. And then in the evening time, myself and Pat Mullen will be adding to our history of heavyweight boxing by looking at Lennox Lewis. You can go in the archives and find me and my daughter, Robert Winfrey, and David Wright talking Demon Slayer. We did the entire series up to this point, the whole first season. That was fun. She did a good job for a 10-year-old girl. She, she held her own there with 3 grumpy old men. We did we talked the Golden Globes and Oscar nominees, and that centered around a conversation about Judas and the Black Messiah. We reviewed Serenia, Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations on the Metal Hammer of Doom. The aforementioned Stumptown the Show and Stumptown the Comic. Robert Winfrey and Sean Comer did a solo Damn You Hollywood for Space Sweepers. And then, speaking of wrestling, we also reviewed NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day. And finally, we did a review for Willy's Wonderland. Have you ever seen Nicolas Cage curb stomp an animatronic gorilla, Christian?
No, I have not.
Well, if you want to, that's the movie for you.
Oh, okay.
Well, when you wake up, go ahead and do your plugs.
Oh, yes. Where am I? You can find me over at chrisandreggie.podbean.com, where there are now over 500 shows. It's a milestone I hit last week on the channel there. A lot of them have to do with the X-Men, so if you like the X-Men, that's there for you. The main show that I'm doing now is the Almost Daily X-Lapsed, up to episode 130, I think, which... it doesn't might not sound like a lot, but I only started it in September, so it's a pretty much everyday thing. In the middle or towards the end of the X of Swords crossover event, which is 22 parts long and probably 20 parts too long. So happy to be coming out the back end of that and on to business as usual coming up very, very soon. You can find blog posts and show notes from me over at chrisisoninfiniteearths.com, and I'm on Twitter at AceComics.
All right. Thank you for joining me tonight, Chris, and thank you all for listening. I always appreciate having you on. We're going to have Chris on again next week, as a matter of fact, because if you love gritty crime noir the way Chris and I do, then you'll love The Rough and Ready Show. Yep, I'm dragging Chris into one of those great DC Hanna-Barbera.
I didn't know we were doing porno comics.
not that Rough and Ready.
RUFF.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, it's not a bondage comic, sir.
Oh, okay, damn it.
Yep, it's Tom and Jerry week, and even though there were Tom and Jerry comics, you really have to go back in the day to find some. Instead, we're going to do the Rough and Ready
They're
show.
boring as shit.
So this is one of those like modern day updated Hanna-Barbera type deals, like the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo and shit like that. So that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Huh?
Right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Source Material Live. Be well, be safe, and behave.